So there's a lot of these sheets around with lots of information on seminars and workshops. There's a Solace 21 Plus workshop in May in Livingston House. There's an Art of Healing seminar and retreat that will be here in Lancaster Gate. There's more information on the notice board downstairs. It's a one-day seminar on lineage, Living a Life Through the Principle by William Haynes, and that will be Saturday, 18th of June, in the South London Peace Embassy, and please bring £3 along for that. And this is a follow-up seminar from the Blessing Information Day, so it's open to first and second generation over 16 years old are welcome. Please bring your own lunch. And there's other things coming up as well. Children's Summer Camp for children 8 to 11. There's more information on the notice board as well. And if you want more information on workshops on the European level, please visit the esgd.org website, and they have all the advertisements for their summer programs up there. A few more things. Next Sunday after church, anyone who's willing, we'd like to play football again in the park at about 1:30. So bring your gear, anyone's welcome. And it was a nice gathering. So over there on the pitch, we saw people who may not come here, but they're still part of our wider family, and I think it's a really great opportunity for people of different ages to come along. Simon's boys and Talaharu and people of that age, so it's really nice. So spread the word. So next Sunday, 1:30, can just meet at the door or something and walk over together. I'm going to invite two wonderful ladies to the stage, and they're going to share a bit about home services that they had last week. So can I ask Anne Hughes to come up first? Is that okay? Yeah, she's just going to say a few things.
Mr. Hashi asked me just before the service something about I think you can understand my voice. Strong enough.
Those downstairs.
Okay, I'll see. Okay, yeah. Yeah, what to say? To me, the home service is very nice. In the sense that it's more natural, it's not so organized, if we can say, than a service here, but it's with a family spirit. And in Mr. Hashi's house, there is often over 10 people, really. Even we have been, I think, 20 once, or something like that, 18 or 20 once. There's a very good spirit where Mr. Hashi, as well as Lisa the last week, gave a home service. And they try to embrace the children as well as the parents, Of course, Kuni Yoshi has been giving a home service himself for the children when Mr. Hashi taking of the adults. But sometimes there is simply one group of adults and children. And the last week was particularly interesting. I can see that second generation, you are closer to the children, you see, than we are in some way. Because you can talk in a way that you understand how they will react. And this is an art. And Lisa gave a very good talk about something deep for us adults, but also very attractive for children. And there was a lot of give and take between like Mr. Hashi as well, there's a lot of give and take between him and the members who are there. And after that, of course, we have a lunch, with people bringing various things, but mainly Reiko Hayashi organizing the lunch. And it is a really nice atmosphere to share together. Very nice. So I really wish that Lisa gave a Sunday service sermon here, because she's able to do it. And any second generation who feel a bit confident in themselves should try to do it. Yeah, but Sarashi cannot ask his children to do it. It's like putting his children forward. So I say that myself, and I hope that some others of you think the same way. We have to embrace the children of our pastors as well, and just lift them up. They can fulfill their their goals. Okay, thank you very much.
So can I invite Anne Kobayashi to come up? We've got two Annes today.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, basically, I want to say similar things to what Anne just said. But home service is very, it's interactive, it's very inspiring, and we have sometimes we don't know who's coming until they arrive, and there's a big variety of people attending sometimes. We get a lot of inspiration. People contribute something. Everybody has a unique contribution to make, and people bring something with them, just bring themselves, bring their own experiences of the past week. So it's very nice. And yes, I think the atmosphere is always good. I think we all learn a lot through the home service, and if you can manage to have one in your home, anybody who would like to, but even if you think it's a bit difficult, I would encourage you to go ahead and do it because it's very rewarding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to just read the reading and then invite the band back up. So the reading today is from Genesis 12, verse 1 to 3, the call of Abram. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people and your father's household, to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you."
Good morning, everyone. Quite unbalanced the way the seating is here. Anyway, trying not to be too lopsided myself. Okay, so I had one of these really sort of odd experiences last night, and I've been thinking about my sermon and prepared my sermon. And just saying a final prayer, and God said, "I don't want you to talk about that." And I said, "Well, what do you want me to talk about then?" And so he said, "Well, I'll tell you on the day." So I don't know what's going to happen or how it's going to come out. I had a similar experience once in North London. I had all the notes and everything, and God said, "No, that's not what you're going to talk about." So I just had to put my notes, leave the notes on the chair and go and stand there, and I hope that God would step in and help me out. So, okay, there we are, thank you. So this particular passage, this particular quote about Abraham, it's in the Divine Principle, and something I've often noticed and often wondered why and pondered about it. And, because it says here, as I said, these few verses in the Principle, it says, "I'll bless you and make your great name great, so you'll be a blessing. I'll bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I'll curse. And in you all the families shall be blessed." And so I thought that's kind of, interesting. What's the word blessing mean? So I had a look up in the dictionary, Hebrew dictionary, and the word blessing is barak, and the root is connected to the word ni. This thing here. So why would a blessing be connected to the word ni? Any ideas? Very good, excellent, Chris. When you receive a blessing, what do you often do? You kneel, yes? Okay, so traditionally people would kneel in order to receive a blessing. And also, which is the weakest part of your body? You have an expression in English, you go weak at the knees, that's right. Is that in other languages as well, or just in English? It's just the English have got weak knees, is it? All right. that me? I thought I turned it off. Sorry. I really apologise. Okay. So that's why people. And so here's the idea that we need blessing. So the idea of blessing then is we need it because of our weakness. We need to be strengthened in whatever it is we're doing. We need to receive God's blessing, whatever it is that we're doing, because by ourselves we cannot do it. And that's the idea of the connection between the knee and blessing being a source of strengthening. And so is there anything here that you need God's help with and God's blessing with? What sort of things do you need God's help and blessing with? What? No, exactly, your marriage. Who here doesn't need God's blessing on their marriage and God's strengthening on their relationship with other people? Yeah? So sometimes it's very easy to get upset with people, and then you have to take a deep breath and say, God, give me strength. Yes, God, help me to be able to not lose my temper, not to get angry, not to hurt this person. That makes sense? And so then we always need to be lifting our hearts up to God to be able to get God's blessing on whatever it is that we happen to be doing. And so that's why it's always good to pray all the time, to invite God to bless what we're doing, to give us strength so that we're not doing something just out of ourselves, out of our own strength. If you're just trying to do something out of your own strength, what happens after a while? You get fatigued. You get burnt out. Yes? Anybody here ever got burnt out? Yeah? Okay, so what was God's medicine for stopping to get burnt out? When do people get burnt out? Because what do you do too hard? Work, yes? Work. And after a while, even if you enjoy the work that you're doing, it's very easy to get burnt out and exhausted, yes? And get a bit cynical. So what was God's medicine to stop people from getting burnt out? The Sabbath, that's right. God gave the Sabbath. So what language is the Sabbath? In Hebrew, that's right. It's not translated in any other language in the world, because no other language in the world has this word, Sabbath. Okay, so it means it's a time of rest, to be able to spend time together with God, with our family. And that was actually the first commandment that God gave the Hebrews when they came out of Egypt. Oh, hello there. Hi. God gave this commandment when they come out of Egypt. He said, you shall collect the manna 6 days a week, but on the seventh day you don't. The seventh day you're not to work. And the seventh day is to be a day of rest. A day when people take time out to worship God, to read, to sing, to have fun together, to eat together, to laugh together, and just to become refreshed, yes? So if one wants to create a God-centered family, then what do you need to do? You have to create a space in time, yeah? There has to be a location, time and space, when the family's all together, where God can be present. So that means there has to be one day of the week when people don't go out to work. It's just spend their time together as a family, reading, praying, singing, dancing, having fun, playing games, playing football, doing all sorts of things just together. And then God can be there in the family. And that means the next day, when you go out to work, you feel refreshed. You have a new mind, a new heart. That makes sense? And don't get burnt out. Okay? So, when I look at our own spiritual community, sometimes I think the problem wasn't that we didn't work hard enough years ago. It's sometimes we worked too hard. And that's why so many of our friends have got burnt out and they just couldn't do it anymore and they left. Does that make sense? We didn't take enough time out to spend time with God and with each other and take care of each other and support each other. I wasn't planning to say any of that. Anyway. So this blessing of Abraham, how do I get back onto track now? Anyway, so it's to do with strengthening, that's right. So God gave that chance, that opportunity where he wanted to bless the family and create this space where people could just enjoy their time. And that was the very first time this entered into the ancient world, this idea of a holiday, a holy day, yes? Where people could be spiritually nourished and refreshed, not just as individuals, but as families and as friends. So this is one of the blessings then that comes from Abraham. So I was going to talk about this, but I don't know if I will. Okay, words to do with blessing. That's one is strengthening. So as Anne very correctly said, we need to have God's blessing on our marriage. So what's the other aspect of blessing? Another aspect is to do with permission, isn't it? You want to get... So for example, if your parents don't support you in what you're doing, how do you feel on the inside? Discouraged, don't you? You don't feel so much support. But when you know you have your parents' support on what it is that you're doing, how do you feel on the inside? What? Safe. Yeah, you feel safe. You feel confident. You feel you have your parents' support and the blessing on what it is that you happen to be doing, whether it's a career that you pursue or choose. And so that's why it's so important for people to feel, yes, I have my parents' blessing and support upon the choices that I'm making in my life. I have my parents' support and blessing upon the person who it is that I've chosen to marry. Does that make sense? So that's why historically always people go along and ask their parents, can I marry this person? Yes, can I have your blessing? Yeah, it's something incredibly important. And so if one doesn't have one's parents' blessing upon what one is doing, then one feels this lack of support. One doesn't feel as strong. Yeah, always in the back of one's mind, there's some sense, oh, what I'm doing is against what my parents wanted me to do. And it's very, very difficult in that kind of situation to do things without one's parents' support. And so, do you think? Anyway. So that that's something very important. So it's the same when with marriage, getting married is we want to have our parents' blessing, our parents' support, and also even more than that, we want to have God's blessing, God's support upon our marriage. Yes, and then we can engage in this relationship of love with a completely free heart, give ourselves wholeheartedly and completely with a completely clear conscience. Yeah. Whereas sometimes when people engage in these kind of relationships, sexual relationships outside marriage, in the back of their mind, there's always some nagging conscience, yes? They can't actually feel completely free. So it makes a huge difference then. That's why we talk about marriage being the blessing. We want to have God's blessing on our marriage. We want to have God's support upon our marriage. We want to have true parents' blessing. We want to have our own parents' blessing. People, when they get married, they invite all their friends because they want to have their friends and their community's blessing and support. Does that make sense? So can you get too many blessings? Would you turn them down? If the Pope said, I want to bless your marriage, would you say, oh, it's okay, I'm all right, thanks? What would you do? Yeah, I'd be more than happy to get as many blessings as possible. So sometimes... people said, oh, why do we need to go through the holy wine ceremony again? How many times did we go through it? I can't remember now, I'm sorry. I'm not fundamentalist enough. Well, sometimes people say, why do we need to do it again? I said, I'm really great, to go through this again and get God's blessing on my marriage over and over and over again. And my wife keeps telling me she wants to go and get married again and again and again. Fortunately, to the same person. So that's the sense in which one wants to, when one gets a blessing, one is like having a new start, a new beginning. One is being strengthened in one's relationship with one's wife and one's children, one's family, and everything else. So that's why blessing is so important. And I'm really happy when people say, God bless you, and because it makes you feel really good. And so it's good then to go around blessing each other and to bless people and support people in what it is that they happen to be doing. Anyway, there's another particular thing which I wanted to talk about, which is to do with Abraham. It says that through Abraham, all the families of the world will be blessed. The whole world will be blessed through Abraham. So how can that be? How does that work? So what is the whole providence of restoration? It's to do with changing what? Lineage, okay? It's to do with changing lineage. So what does that mean to change one's lineage? What are you changing when you change your lineage? Pardon?
From Satan to God.
Okay, from Satan to God. All right, do you want to unpack that? What does that mean? What changes when you change your lineage?
Changing Satan's lineage and joining God's.
Yeah, what does that mean?
It's to do with also your lifestyle and culture and how you look at things, how you behave.
Well, yeah, but what's the lineage got to do with that?
In a sense, we're pure again.
Pardon?
In a sense, we're pure again.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Thinking
Okay. Changing parents. Okay. That's getting closer to it. Yes.
Developing foundation substance.
Opening of a new level.
Up a new level. Okay.
Before Abraham, mankind had fallen really to the bottom. And from the time of Abraham, because of Abraham moving to God's side, it opened a new level.
Okay, so he moved to God's side, but what does that mean on the inside? How did that change what was going on inside himself?
A great opening for God to work through us.
Yeah, but how did he think? How did the way he thought about himself change when he changed his lineage?
You want to tell us?
No. I want you to think about it, work it out.
He was able to see himself as a child of God.
Exactly. Yes. He came to identify and see himself and feel, I am the Son of God. Yes? So from that, it's to do with change of identity. He said, I'm the Son of God. That means lineage establishes identity. Yes? It's through this change of lineage, it's change of identity. From finding your true identity to finding your true self, I am the son or I am the daughter of God. That is who I am. That is where my confidence and my faith lies in, the fact that I'm the son or I'm the daughter of God. That is my identity, that's who I am, and that comes from my lineage. That makes sense? Yeah, that's the connection. Change of lineage is change of identity. From finding the core of one's identity in one's race or one's nationality or in one's religion or in, oh, I'm the son of the president of this particular company, or I come from a working class background, or I'm an aristocrat, I'm the lord of the manor, yes? Finding one's identity instead of that in one's relationship with God. I am the Son of God. And in that case, all human beings then are my brothers and sisters. Yeah, and we're all equal in front of God. We're all equal. It doesn't matter about your race, your religion, your class, any of this sort of stuff. It doesn't count for anything. That makes sense? That's what change of lineage is, change of identity. Is that hard? It's so simple, isn't it, really? Lineage is to do, change of lineage is change of identity. It's about who do I conceptualize and see myself. I am the son or I am the daughter of God. That is my lineage. And that is what Adam and Eve lost when they fell. Were Adam and Eve still the son and daughter of God after the fall? Yes or no? Okay, let's have a vote on it. Okay, if you thought Adam and Eve were no longer the son and daughter of God after the fall, put your hands up. One person. If you thought they were still the son and daughter of God after the fall, put your hands up. Okay, so I think that's the majority wins. All right, they were still God's children, but did they feel like they were God's children? Did they feel like they were worthy to call themselves a son or daughter of God? So what was their overwhelming feeling after the fall? They felt what? Guilt and shame. They no longer felt worthy to call themselves a son or daughter of God because of their shame. They hid away from God. They knew they were God's son and daughter, but they couldn't feel God's love anymore. So if you do something your parents don't want you to do, and you see your parents, how do you feel inside? And your parents welcome you and are happy to see you and love you. How do you feel on the inside? Blocked. Yeah. Even though they still love you exactly the same way, you can't feel that love because you don't feel worthy of that love, because sin separates us from God. Sin separates us from our parents. That makes sense? And it's only when we actually confess our sins, we own up, and then we're forgiven, and then the relationship is then restored, and then we feel worthy of God's love, and we can experience and feel God's love and our parents' love. Does that make sense? So instead of that, then Adam and Eve no longer felt they're worthy of God's love. They couldn't feel God's love. Instead, they had to find their identity in something else. Yeah, and so that's where this idol worship stuff comes from. Yeah, which we're singing about in that song. Good song. Good choice. Thank you. I had the word knee in there. That started the whole sermon. So I knew God must be working somewhere. All right. So that then is to do with that. And so the whole history of restoration then is trying to get people, helping people to find their true identity, to come back, to be restored and reconnected to God. That's what religion means. You're getting back to God. And so this whole thing then is about a change of identity, is about change of lineage, so that people no longer think of themselves, oh, the core of my identity is all these idol worship kind of stuff, nationalism, race, etc., religion, but actually the core of my identity comes from my relationship with God. And that's why I have this prohibition of idol worship and all these other sorts of things. So that's what's going on here in this shocking story. Who finds this a shocking story? Abraham and Isaac. Only 2 people. The rest of you are quite happy with this story. This is the most shocking story in the world. And it's even more shocking the fact that this story is actually the founding story of Judaism, Christianity, Islam. So how is this the founding story of these, the religions which have changed the world? How does that work? So everything is to do with change of lineage. So how is this story here about change of lineage? What's going on? It's a very shocking story. Let's just read it. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. He said, Take your son, your only son, whom you love, really putting the knife in here, and offer him as a burnt offering. So Abraham rose early in the morning. So what's going on here? What's God doing to Abraham?
He's telling him to kill his son.
Yeah, it says here he's testing him. So why is God testing Abraham? Does God know Abraham inside out? Yeah. I mean, when you go and sit an exam at school, have your teachers got a pretty good idea of whether you're going to pass or fail? Yeah? When you sit the exam, do you think God knows what mark you're going to get before you even pick up the pen? Yeah, because he knows what's inside you and whether you can answer those particular questions or not. Okay, so what is it? Why would God be testing Abraham? He hasn't done well before.
I think God was looking for a miracle.
God is looking for a miracle.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Where did you get that one from? No, you're absolutely right. That's amazing. Okay, you're tuned in. Okay, test and miracle are the same word in Hebrew. Did you know that? Test and the word for test in Hebrew is the same as the word for miracle. So how can a test be a miracle?
When you put under pressure, you achieve things you couldn't imagine.
Exactly. It's to do with breaking barriers. So, for example, a very easy example is you can go, you can go to a swimming pool, you can see the very high diving board, you can sit by the side of the pool and you can watch dozens and hundreds of people climbing up the ladder and jumping off, yes? And you'll never see anybody breaking their neck or breaking their leg or drowning or anything else. And you think, wow, I'd like to do that. So you climb up to the top and you look over the edge of the diving board and what do you do? Chicken out, yes. You chicken out. So why is that? What is it that makes us chicken out? Fear. Is it something rational or irrational? It's irrational. Rationally, you've watched 100 people jump off and not a single one has died or drowned. So it's not rational, it's irrational. Yeah? Something inside us, like a sort of barrier, certain kind of concepts which is stopping us from doing that. Okay? So eventually, after a while, if you stand there for long enough, you might pluck up the courage and you actually jump off. Yes? And when you come back to the surface, how do you feel? Relief? More than just relief? Just relief, is that it? Oh, I didn't drown, that's great. Is that all you feel? You feel ecstatic. Yeah, you feel on top of the world. And what do you do next? You do it again and again and again. You know what I mean? So what's happened here, that's like a test. You've gone through, broken these barriers and concepts that you have within inside yourself, and you've done something, yes? Gone on to another level in your life. And so that's what God is doing here with Abraham. He's putting Abraham in a situation where he's been tested so that he can go, not that God doesn't know him inside out, but he's putting him in this situation where he had to break these concepts and break these barriers within himself so he can move on to the next level. That make sense? Doing something which you think is impossible, and it's to do with breaking these habits of thinking. And Abraham passed lots of tests. Anyway, so sacrificing Isaac was against everything he believed was right. So, why did he do it?
Trusting God. He trusted God as he had faith that it was the right thing to do.
Okay. Do you think sacrificing one's child was an unusual thing to do?
Yeah, why didn't he argue with God like he did at other times over other situations?
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, good question. Why didn't he argue with God like he did over Sodom and Gomorrah? Anne?
I think he was very aware that he committed a big mistake in a previous sacrifice with the animals.
Okay.
He always had this feeling of deep sadness and
Okay.
so he had prayed for a long time
Mm-hmm.
to get a chance to attune for that, to atone for that.
Okay, let's put that. Okay, let's put the animals in a bracket. Okay, I think even if he'd been successful in that offering, I think God would have still asked him to do this, because I think this is meaningful in its own right. But we just need to understand why. Yes, Isaac. Yeah.
I think, like, you were saying, like, sacrificials, like, of sons was common back in those days.
Yeah.
Like, when killing, like,
Yeah, I mean, sacrificing children was quite common in those days. In the ancient world, child sacrifice is a relatively common thing. I mean, you know, if you watch Indiana Jones, it was still carrying on until, you know, relatively recently in some parts of the world. So why would parents sacrifice their children? Why do people do that?
You need to do it, make it a pure.
Okay, so people want to make it a pure offering. Okay, so why would they want to offer their children to God then?
it's the biggest thing you can offer.
Hmm?
It's the biggest thing you can offer.
Yeah. It's the most precious thing that a parent has is their children. And so people say, I want to offer the thing that I have that is most precious to me, and this is my children. Yes? So do you think that people who engage in child sacrifice, do you think they were religious and sincere or not?
Maybe sincere.
Hmm?
Maybe sincere, but not religious.
Well, for them, this is their way in which they worship God. So they were, in that sense, they're incredibly religious. They were offering to God that which is most precious to them, which is their children. So to get to that point requires a huge amount of sincerity, a huge amount of commitment, and in that sense being incredibly religious. That makes sense? So, okay, so why did Isaac go along with it? If your parents said that to you, would you go along with that? If your parents said, "Oh, you know, I just got a revelation from God, I have to take you down and barbecue you," is that okay? You'd be on the phone to the social services. Child abuse just about to happen. You send someone round to rescue me, please. I want to be adopted. Yes? That makes sense. These are really difficult questions to try and unpick, work out what's really going on here. So one could say, well, the core of my being comes from my relationship, my commitment to God. So that could be a very religious perspective. But anyway, let's try and unpack this a little bit more. So Abraham was supposed to be a role model. So God said, I have chosen him so that he will instruct his children, so he'll teach his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. So Abraham is supposed to be a role model. Okay? Should we follow his role model in this, sacrificing our children? So what's going on here?
It's to do with the relationship of how Isaac also looks at his father and what he sees him doing in relationship to God.
But did Isaac do the same thing with his kids?
No,
So
that's not necessarily the point.
it's something going on here. It's obviously not a role model. Anyway, Kierkegaard, who was a Danish philosopher, he talked in this sort of philosophical language about the teleological suspension of the ethical. So teleological means it's because of purpose, you can suspend the ethical. In other words, if you're doing something for a good purpose, then it's okay to do something which is unethical, immoral, or illegal. The end, in ordinary language, you say the end justifies the means. What? Yeah, the end justifies the means. In other words, because God told me to do it, it's okay to do it. God, if God tells me to do that, then that overrides any law, ethic, principle, or moral things. Yeah, that makes sense? Okay, what do you think about that as an explanation for Abraham? Willingness to sacrifice Isaac.
It's a bit concerning.
Why is it concerning?
Well, I mean, when you hear people talk like that today, you tend to be a bit disturbed by some of the things that they want to do,
Yeah.
and the means they want to do.
Yeah, so this is the logic of the religious fanatic. It's the logic of the suicide bomber. It's the logic of the person that goes around with thumb screws in the Middle Ages, torturing people to persuade them to change their religion and become good Christians. Yeah, that's the logic of the religious fanatic. The mother who says to her, who encourages their children, why don't you grow up and go and blow yourself up and kill all these people for God, to advance the jihad. That make sense? Is that a nice thing to do? No. So this is an important story, and depending upon how you understand it, would change the way in which you live your life. Yeah. People have been misunderstanding this story for thousands of years and using it to justify all kinds of terrible things that they do in the name of God. Yes? People do all kinds of terrible things in God's name. Yeah? Because that's what this story can be understood to be about. That's why it's so important to understand this story properly. So basically, God does not ask us to be unethical. Yeah? God reveals the law, the commandments, and God expects us to live within the moral law. Yes? God never asks us to do something which is unethical. So another way of looking at it then is that it was actually to do with this change of lineage. It was a challenge to the ancient family. So because of the fall then, the family all relationships within the family became corrupted. We say Satan came to have dominion. So what does that mean? Well, it means a relationship between parents and children, a relationship between husband and wife, a relationship between men and women, a relationship between brothers and sisters. All these relationships became corrupted because of the fall. Yes? All these relationships became corrupted. And so in the ancient world then, this is the way it was. The family in the ancient world had a domestic religion where people used to worship their ancestors. So that was normal. People would worship their ancestors because for them their identity would come from their ancestors and they'd worship them. And child sacrifice then was a very common way of expressing their religiosity. And so the head of the family then, in the ancient world, he had absolute authority. So the husband or the father, he had the authority of life and death over his wife and children. So man was allowed to had the authority, the right to put his wife and his children to death. Yeah? In Roman law it's called patria potestas. Why could a man put his wife or his children to death without breaking the law? Why?
Because it was his property.
They were his property. A man owned his wife. A man owned his children. You can dispose of your property however you want. Yes? That's why. Because of the fall, that's the way it was. All these relationships became corrupted and distorted. Is that an old thing, or is that still, can you hear echoes of that in the modern world? Yes, you can. I mean, in Britain until, when I was a child, in the middle of the 20th century, if a woman wanted to open a bank account, what did she have to get? She had to get permission from her husband if she was married, or from her father if she was not married. In the 20th century, still going on. In the 19th century, if an English woman, a wealthy English woman got married, what happened to her property? Yeah, it was transferred into the name of her husband. That was English law. So where does that come from? This is all a relic, an echo of the fall, yes? And gradually these sort of things are being changed, yeah? Anyway, so both of the property, authority is inherited by the firstborn. So the firstborn son, if he wanted to, he could put his mother and his to death. It happened from time to time, but that was his legal right. So the biblical tradition then rejects all of these, which are pagan. Every single one of these points is rejected in the Bible because they're pagan. All of these are the result of the fall. And so child sacrifice in the Bible is condemned more than anything else. Over and over again it's condemned. And God said, it's the most awful thing. So when a religious person sacrifices their children as an offering to God, how do you think God feels? Bit sick. God's not happy for his children to get burnt as a gift. Yes? Doesn't make God happy, does it? So that's why in the biblical tradition, it's the Jewish people who stopped child sacrifice before anybody else. So the biblical worldview is very different. In the biblical worldview, worship the God of all humanity. Don't worship ancestors. Yeah? Everyone is equal in front of God. And so there's, in the Bible, again, the first people who didn't, there are no sacrifices to dead ancestors recorded in the Bible because they just worship God. And so this is the idea that every human being is a son or daughter of God. So the spirit world then is very flat. Yeah? Everyone is a son or daughter of God. It's not that we're the sort of 10th generation descendant from God. Everyone individually is a son or daughter of God. And then again, the biblical tradition, from page 1, it says, God created man in his image and likeness, male and female, he created them. Page 1 in the Bible, the equality of masculinity and femininity. The 10 Commandments, you should honor your father and your mother. Yes, within the family then, a father and mother have equal authority. Okay, again, it's shocking in the ancient world. Nowadays you think, well, that's fairly normal, but 4,000 years ago, this is profoundly shocking. Yeah, it's only recently these ideas have started to affect and change the world. So this is the understanding then, that if every human being then is a son or daughter of God, then parents don't own their children. If you sacrifice your children, what does that mean? You can only sacrifice your children and give your children to God if they are your property. Yes? If you don't own your children, can you sacrifice them? No, because they're not yours. That makes sense? So this is the understanding then. Parents don't own their children because children are the sons and daughters of God. So parents then, in that sense, are like the guardians of their children. We're given children, so through having children, we can experience God's love for us. Yeah, that's the point of the second blessing. As my mother always used to tell me, you won't understand how much we worried about you and how much we did for you until you have children of your own. And it's true. Sometimes you want to throw your children out the window and you think, my God, how do my parents have so much patience with me? You know what I'm saying? It's only through becoming a parent that we can understand parental love. Yes? But the children we're having are God's children. That's part of God's lineage. Yes, that makes sense? So not our children to dispose of as we wish. They're our children, they're God's children, which God has given us to take care of and to support and to help them to fulfill their potential and to actually become better than us. That makes sense? So the individual then, so from this event then, what happened at Abraham and Isaac, you carry on, Isaac?
I was asking a question. Do you then think that some parents think that we're obligated to listen to them because of this? Like Isaac kind of obeyed his dad, not obeying, but in some sort of
Okay.
Do you think that some parents now think that we're obligated to listen to them because of it?
Well, yeah, yes, sometimes people use that story in that way, but we'll come on to the Isaac bit a bit later. What was going on in Isaac's mind, okay? And so from this event then, it was been established that the individual has divine, unique, and eternal value. From this event, so what God was asking Abraham to do was to say, I don't own Isaac. So when God said this to Abraham, I want you to sacrifice your son, your only son, the son that you love, as a burnt offering, what could Abraham have said? In the ancient world, what could he have said? He could have said, no. And what reasons would he have given for saying no? He's my son. He's my son. You can't ask me to sacrifice my son because he's mine. If I put him to death, I'm not going to have any children, any grandchildren, etc., etc. You can't ask me to do this because this is my son. You know what I'm saying? So what Abraham was having to do here, he was having to renounce his ownership of Isaac. He's having to say, no, God has the right to ask me to do this because Isaac is not my son, he is God's son. That makes sense? It's an incredible, heart-wrenching thing that Abraham was having to go through to recognize and accept Isaac is God's son. Therefore, as much as I love him, as much as the fact that it's only through him I'm going to have any grandchildren, he is God's. I have to recognize he belongs to God. God owns him. I don't own him. He's not my property. He's not my son in that kind of sense. That makes sense? This is incredible, this change which took place from this moment 4,000 years ago. It's taken thousands of years till it started to work its way out in social legislation, yes? The idea that children have got rights and all these things. Okay? So children are not the property of their parents, they belong to God. Also, the important point here is children don't belong to the state. Yeah? On the continent of Europe, you are a citizen of the state. The state owns you, the state gives you your identity, the state can send you off to war and do all sorts of things because you're the property of the state. Yeah, that's where you get fascism and communism. Okay, that is also, completely wrong. People, conceptualizing themselves as citizen and putting their nationality as the primary source of their identity. So what's going on here? This change of ownership is a change of lineage and a change of identity. So, this is what Father said, where's the change of blood lineage done? On the individual level, man has to go beyond the boundary of life and death. The individual has to go through a life and death situation for the sake of God and the future dignity of man. Did Abraham and Isaac go through that? Did they go through a life and death situation for the sake of God and the future dignity of man? Through going through this, it was established the future dignity of man, that every human being has divine, unique, eternal, individual value. The whole understanding of the value of the individual as a son or daughter of God comes from this event. Yeah, it's taken about 4,000 years for these things to work their way out in the world. But that's where this sort of thing started. And so that's why we talk about, everybody in the world being blessed through Abraham. Because of what Abraham did here, that meant that we have individual, you talk about human rights, all that comes from this thing that Abraham established here. So in that sense, the whole world is getting the blessing of freedom, of individual value, of human rights, all these things then, sort of the gradual outworkings. Yeah, it started here with this one event and gradually worked its way out through the family, through society, through the nation, and now recently into the world, yes? This pursuit of the recognition of the value of the individual and these sorts of things. So, not easy. You look at this, for example, when Eve gave birth, she gave birth to her first son, and this is what it says in the Bible. She named her son and said, with the help of the Lord I have acquired, so the Hebrew word is kaniti, a man. So Eve named her first son Cain. So acquired is the name of Cain means I'm acquired, I'm possessed, I'm a possession. So from Eve's point of view, she felt this is my son. Yes, Eve was a very, very possessive kind of mother, very possessive kind of parent. Yes, that's if you're very, very possessive, what do children usually do? Try and get away. Yes, love should create a space of freedom. Possessive love is a kind of selfish love. And so Eve then was a very possessive mother. So really a difficult situation, this. Trying to break this kind of thing. Anyway, so this event then was marked then within Judaism with circumcision. When a little boy was circumcised, it's a mark of the covenant on a boy's sexual organ. This is signifying that this person belongs to God. Yeah, that's a recognition of that through that event, through that ceremony. This is God's son. He is a son of the covenant. That's what the word circumcision in Hebrew means. A son of the covenant. This person identity comes from their relationship with God. That makes sense? And then that was on the 8 days, Jewish boys are circumcised. And what happened to you kids on when you were 8 days old? Do you remember? You remember, Jude? What happened when you were 8 days old? Joint weight. Okay, it was a long time ago. But anyway, when you're 8 days old, you might remember some of your younger brothers or sisters, there's what you call the 8-day dedication ceremony, yes? When parents, we recognize that the children that we have are not our children, they are actually God's children. We dedicate our children to God, and we pledge before God, we're going to bring up your children, yes? We're going to look after your children. We're going to take care of your children. We're going to make sure that your children are educated and well brought up, and they can fulfill their potential and become a true son and daughter. So, change of lineage then, it's about this, change of identity. And there's more to lineage than having babies. Is it easy to make babies? Making babies is easy. What's the hard part? Bringing them up, yes? So they have this consciousness that they're the son or the daughter of God. That's the hard part, yes, of having children. It's bringing them up so they have this God consciousness. They feel, yes, I am the son or daughter of God. And they only feel that way if they're treated by their parents as a son or daughter of God. So does God want us to sacrifice our children? No. Child sacrifice is wrong. Okay? So, sometimes in our own spiritual community, sometimes we've done that. We've neglected our children. We haven't taken care of our children the way we're supposed to have taken care of our children. I think partly it's because of a misunderstanding of the real meaning of this story. Yes? And sometimes people have run off to do God's will and left their wife and children behind. I'm very guilty of this. But I learned, anyway. But it's really important then to actually get one's husband and wife or children's permission before one goes running off doing God's will. Does that make sense? So the other question is then, why did Isaac go along with this? What could Isaac have said? Abraham wakes him up and says, tomorrow morning, tomorrow, son, we're going to go and I'm going to, God told me to sacrifice you, the burnt offering. Okay. What could Isaac have said? Thanks but no thanks. I really respect your sincere devotion to God, but I don't really want to participate in that. Thank you very much. What basis could he have given for refusing to participate?
How will your blessing, the blessing that God gave to you, be fulfilled if
Yeah, he could have said that.
He was the first son, so he had rights
Hmm?
in the family as well.
What?
He was the first son, so he had his own rights as well. Even back then.
Well, he could have said, whose life is this? It's my life, yes? It's my life. You have no right to do this. It's my life. And so what was Isaac having to do then? What?
Same as his father.
Hmm?
Same as his father. in the sense.
Which means he was having to do what? What was he having to recognize about himself? That's right, he was a child of God. And so God, he belonged to God, and therefore God had the right to ask him to do this, yes? It wasn't his life, but his life was God's life. He was God's son. So if God wanted to sacrifice him, then he felt, I don't understand why this is necessary. I don't understand why God wants me to do this, but I'm not living a selfish life. My life is God's life. So if that's what God wants from me, then I'm willing to do that. That makes sense? So it's a huge change of consciousness for Abraham, this barrier, also a huge change of consciousness then for Isaac, to move to this level where both of them were letting go of the fallen way of looking at themselves, the fallen way of looking at each other, to get to a point where actually they recognize, I belong to God. I am the son, I am the daughter of God. That is the core of my identity. Does that make sense? And not being a selfish person, or selfishly doing anything like that. That make sense? I better stop. It's not 12:30, is it? Oh, God. Okay, we'll skip the last part then. Okay, so I thought you're supposed to be waving your hand at me. No, it's not your fault, it's my fault. I just got carried away. Anyway, I wasn't expecting to say any of this. But anyway, so thank you all very much, and let's stop there.
So we'll have to have Uncle William back to see that message tied in a bow. June, sound okay? So we'll just take some time. There's enough to chew on really there for us to finish. So we'll just have some quiet reflection and then we'll go into the offering song.